Hi, welcome. It's the Bett and Daga show. We're going to talk about TRE. So I'm going to turn it right over to Daga.
Yes, so today we're going to talk about TRE. Before I explain what stands behind this mysterious abbreviation, and I know that Bet, you don't know, right, what TRE is. I'll ask you if you've ever experienced that in a moment of stress or tension, like before giving a public speech or having an important meeting or being in an argument, you notice that your hands start to shake, or even your body starts to shake a little bit.
I've had that a few times, but not very often.
Uh-huh. So what would be your response to that? When you notice that you start to shake, what is your reaction?
I would say that I try to stop it because if I'm like, I don't want to
Right.
be on stage like that.
Right. Of course. And this is what most people do, and this is what how most people react. So we are in this moment of extreme stress, or sometimes not even extreme, and we notice that our body starts to shake. And then we start thinking, oh my God, not now. It looks like maybe I'm weak or I cannot control myself. And I'm just in that situation where I cannot be weak and I have to pull myself together, etc. So our relationship to that reaction of our body is quite repressive and we resist it. Basically, we don't like it, right? While with the most likelihood, this is actually our body being wise in that moment and trying to release the excess of stress hormones and the excess of the tension that has been built up through those shakings and tremorings, right? Knowing this now, I'll explain what TRE is. Yeah, so TRE is a technique to reduce stress and tension through artificially evoking tremors and shaking in a way that our body normally and naturally would do. It's a mechanism which is absolutely natural for humans and for mammals in general. And it serves us to, well, discharge those stress-related hormones, the excessive energy, etc. TRE stands for tension and trauma release exercises. And it basically is just that. It's a body-based technique which helps to evoke neurogenic tremors. So we call them neurogenic because they are involuntarily. They are evoked on the level of our nervous system and our like deep muscular patterns of tension, but not through our thinking process and like deciding, oh, this is now I'm gonna shake so that I let go of that stress. These stress patterns and these tension patterns that we are able to release through TRE shaking and TRE technique, they sometimes go much deeper, and they might uncover some stress patterns and tension patterns that we weren't even aware of. Okay, so that would be what it is. Again, as I said, it's a technique. It's a set of exercises to evoke those natural tremors, right? So the mechanism of shaking exists in everybody, and because it doesn't look good and it looks as if we were losing control and it looks as if we are not calm enough, and it just doesn't give us the image that we want to have in society, and it's not welcome and it just looks odd, and it is true we are not in control of that mechanism, then we repress it and we're ashamed of it, and we feel very vulnerable when it happens. And just recently, I actually started watching a show, which is a German show. It's called Babylon Berlin, and it's set in the 20s in Berlin. The 20s, the golden 20s in Berlin, in between two world wars. And it's just 10 years after the First World War. And some of the characters who are in that show, they are laughed at, and they are very ashamed of their tremors and the trembling that they experience, which is well, most of them, they are soldiers with what we now call PTSD, which was called in the First World War shell shock, after it was actually, you know, discovered and described, etc. And the shaking, as much as it can be one of the signs of extreme stress and traumatic stress disorder, it is actually a natural way of our body to get the discharge of that energy which is not serving and which doesn't belong to the present moment. I would encourage you guys, maybe I will also look for some links and we will put it in the show notes. I would encourage you guys to look for short videos where we can see a polar bear, for example, shaking after being caught in I think it was somewhere in North Pole. So there was a polar bear that was caught by I think the rangers, and they were giving it a shot. And before they let the bear out, they allowed the bear to shake in an uncontrollable way. And it looks like there's no pattern. It looks like very, very strange, as if the bear was actually sick. But what we can see when they analyze it, it looks like the completion of the movement that the bear couldn't have done when it was captured. So the bear was captured, it couldn't escape. So the shaking is like, as it was escaped, it basically froze. That was the response to survive. That was the only way to survive. So to basically just dissociate completely from the energy, got stuck. So before it went back to its habitat, it had to discharge that energy. And people in working in natural parks, and if they deal with animals, like free animals, wild animals, they know that if it happens that they need to treat them or maybe mark them, etc., they need to make sure that before being set out free, the animals need to shake. They need to go through that tremor, because otherwise the stress and the stress hormones are gonna overwhelm them. They're not gonna be able to go back to balance. So the shaking that we evoke through TRE, it's that way that we can balance our nervous system, that we can let go of stress, whether it's chronic stress, whether it's like some deep tension that has been built up for years, for our whole life sometimes, or whether it's related to some kind of traumatic event, or even if it's just like a daily stress. So TRE can be really like a part of a daily maintenance routine exercise, because it was also created as a self-help tool and as a way to self-regulate.
Very amazing. So how long does it take to learn
Mhm,
this method? Like, can you
mhm,
learn it pretty quickly, or
mhm.
is it months of training, or how does that training work?
Yeah. So to learn the method, you don't need to spend too much time on that, because it was created with that purpose of being very accessible. So even one session could be enough to learn the sequence of the exercises. There are 7 exercises, and they slowly we build up, we activate the tremor, and then we just tremor. So just to use it for yourself, sometimes even one session with a provider is enough, or maybe you can even download the app about TRE or even watch videos. However, since it is a mechanism which we are not familiar with, and it might feel very, very strange, it is advisable to have a first session or a few first sessions with a certified provider, because the response of our body can be really, well, surprising at least. So people experience tremors, vibrations, shaking, big shaking, small shaking, and they experience like it's energy going through the body. So there's maybe changes of temperature, maybe even some people feel aroused. There are all kinds of reactions to that, and sometimes just to cultivate and to nourish that sense of safety in oneself, it's good to have somebody that you can trust and that you can make sure that everything is okay with you, and that can show you also how to regulate and how to make the tremors shorter or smaller, or just to help yourself so that you can actually use it yourself in a very safe way. Another thing is, which for me was the biggest discovery or the biggest gift of TRE in my personal life, and I can see also when I work with my clients, was that that was my principal tool to actually embody and understand in an embodied sense what it means to let go. Because unlike in any other exercises or techniques when we need to put our conscious effort and discipline and focus into doing certain things, even if in yoga, right, we need to be very conscious about like what is our posture, where our limits, etc. With TRE, the less we control and the more we surrender to how the body directs the process, the more benefits we get. So sometimes when I talk to people, when I talk to my clients who feel like, oh, I should have more. So I was trying to have more. Well, the trying usually doesn't work because it's the opposite of what we want to experience in that. So that was for me, that was an amazing experience to actually see what it feels for me, like not even what it means. So how this intellectual concept of letting go, how it feels in the body, how it is to trust my body to let go and just surrender to that, and not being attached to any certain outcome, any like a certain result of that process, etc. So yeah, that's like the overview of the technique. Again, I really advise to start with a trained provider. You can also do it online. I know that there are people doing it online. I also do it online. And also with the provider, you can consult whether there are any counter indications. It's basically, there are very, very few situations when we need to be cautious whether we want to engage in TRE, like maybe recent surgery, certain physical conditions like high and low blood pressure, and epilepsy in pregnancy. And many of those, like with many other things, are also related to the fact that it just hasn't been researched yet. So we cannot really say, right, how it affects. And certain psychiatric conditions which are diagnosed and treated, there also might be counter indications. But other than that, it's great for just like daily maintenance and just dealing with the everyday stress, as well as approaching some deep trauma, even if we don't know where the trauma comes from.
So is there group classes for this, or is it always one-on-one?
Group classes are actually very good. And yes, there are many group classes. The tool, this practice, which was developed by Dr. David Berceli, was one of the purposes was to assist people, help people with conflict resolution. So Dr. David Berceli works in conflict zones and also in areas of natural disasters. And as a psychotherapist, he observed like, well, the nervous system is agitated, then people are more hostile. And we know that, right? So how to help with the conflict resolution and how to help people go back to balance in their nervous system when there is no possibility to have access to psychotherapists and talk to them. Maybe, the scope of the catastrophe is too big, or like, is there just too many people involved? So there are group TRE sessions because TRE doesn't really need language. We need to learn the exercises, but it's enough if we just do it, just mimicking or following. And the group experiences can be very powerful because we have also that group resonance, and many different organisms being in the same state together, going through the same journey together, which can be very beautiful. Recently, I had a group of people who tried it for the first time. And just to give you some examples of how people are touched by it, by this technique. So one of the participants said that they felt relieved because they would experience similar shaking in their life, like sometimes when they were lying down in the evening, and they thought that they were having a beginning of Parkinson's disease, and that person is maybe in her 30s. So that can be quite a scary thought, right? And it also shows us how little we are allowed to explore our own properties of our or the healing that our body has, right? And like how little we are allowed in our society to actually trust that something that is happening in our body is there to serve us. No, it's not necessarily a sign of a disease or something wrong being with us, but it's actually our body knowing what to do to self-regulate. And another girl, she came to the session with back pain, and she couldn't sit, and she was like moving all the time. We had like a little bit of introduction, like a talking session before that, and after she finished her the practice, she felt relieved, and the next day she sent me a message saying that the back pain was gone. Like she felt relieved and the back pain was gone. Yeah. So yeah, physical maybe ailments or tightness, lower back pain, neck and shoulders pain. This is what people use TRE for if they want to relieve that. Some stiffness, but also some chronic pain that cannot be really pinpoint and diagnose what exactly is causing that. Often when it's related to stress or some emotional issues, let's say, or problems like anxiety or sleeplessness. Relationship issues when we feel like we have no capacity to communicate in our relationship and we are easily agitated, etc. This is what TRE can help people with.
Okay, I have a quick question, and if you don't know the answer, that's okay. Do you feel like the cultures that we used to live in as, before we all moved into cities and started working at factories, that dance was such a big part, and after whatever happened, there was dances.
Mhm.
So you mentioned, maybe you mentioned offline, not on a podcast, but do you think that humanity developed dance as a release that then we've just kind of forgotten about and lost? And TRE is sort of recapturing that.
My personal opinion is yes, like absolutely. Movement, any kind of movement, and especially if it's fun and if it's playful, that's one of the main benefits, and something that we in TRE community also want to include is that connection to play. And dance is basically is playfulness and it's connection also without words, without additional stories, right? It's just like finding that connection in a group and that um, resonance, right, with all the participants. So in my opinion, absolutely yes. We need to dance more. Okay,
All right. Well, that was very interesting. I didn't know anything about that. I really appreciate this. And maybe we can do deeper
great,
dives in the future. But this is, I think,
great.
where we should end today. So thank
Okay,
you. Thank you, Daga. And thank you, our listeners and viewers. Please put comments in the comment section, share, like, subscribe, and see you next time.
amazing. Thank you. Bye.